Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Brian Kelly made it very clear that this LSU program is going to be one of the most aggressive teams in the country in the transfer portal over the next couple of weeks. And I think what excites me the most if I'm an LSU fan is one, there is some clear pressure on Brian Kelly to really put it together in 2025. And I think secondly, LSU has the means to do so. You look at Bryce Underwood flipping from LSU to Michigan. There was a lot of money that was allocated to Bryce Underwood that now can be spent and used in the transfer portal over the next couple of weeks. And for those reasons, I think LSU is going to be very aggressive. Now, I think there's two different conversations you want to get into. One, all right, what positions do we need to address in the transfer portal? I think, secondly, what names might we find in the transfer portal that would make a lot of sense for LSU? Fired up to get into this one now. Before we do, and as always, the best part about these kind of episodes is hearing from y'all in the comment section. What positions would you want to see LSU go out and get? And I think, secondly, what names do you think would be intriguing for LSU? So let it fly in the comment section. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into this conversation. I want to start with the quarterback spot. That's probably the most popular talking point for LSU fans after the Bryce Underwood news. And I've listened to a lot of really smart people talk about LSU, people who cover this sport, and they're talking about depth at the quarterback position. And I want to make it very clear. I think there's a difference between depth at the quarterback spot and a future at the quarterback spot. I think LSU needs to be more concerned about the future of this quarterback room than bringing in depth. I think it's pretty clear you're probably going to lose at least one quarterback to the transfer portal when it opens up. Yes, you want to bring in depth, but I think you can do it at the same time with also building out a future with the quarterback room. So I look at Garrett Nussmeier. It sounds like he's going to be back in 2025, and that's a quarterback that you can win at a very high level with. You want to add some depth. AJ Swann's an example of depth. I don't think he's the future of this LSU quarterback room. If you do want to go address the quarterback position in the transfer portal, I'm much more concerned with you can address depth in the room, but at the same time, you can address the future. A guy like Aaron Nolan, to me, makes a ton of sense. And I want to make it very clear, like an ideal situation for me at the quarterback position is, all right, Garrett Nussmeier comes back in 2025. You have a quarterback that you can win a lot of football games with. In an ideal spot, the quarterback room might look like Garrett Nussmeier starting with a guy like Aaron Nolan from Ohio State and Colin Hurley kind of battling it out as those depth pieces. And then you fast forward to 2026 and say, all right, Hurley, Aaron Nolan kind of battling it out for that quarterback one spot. That's a good spot for LSU to be in. If LSU can hang on to a guy like Colin Hurley, who I think is a very good football player that could have a very bright future for LSU, and then also add just one more piece, to me, that makes the most sense. Now, you look at Aaron Nolan. This is a guy that committed to Ohio State, enrolled with Ohio State, and then when he enrolls, Julian Sayin enters the transfer portal from Alabama to Ohio State. So Aaron Nolan thought he was the guy for Ohio State in 2024. Ohio State kind of throws him a curveball and adds a guy like Julian Sayin. I would not be surprised in the slightest if Aaron Nolan hits the transfer portal over the next couple of weeks. This kid's really exciting. 6'2", 190, runs an 11.5 in the 100-meter dash out of high school. So he's got a big arm from Langston Hughes. He's a lefty gunslinger, but also gives you some of that athleticism. I think there are some things you need to clean up for Aaron Nolan that I think you can do in the 2025 year while Garrett Nussmeier is your quarterback one. To me, that makes the most sense. People are talking about depth at the quarterback spot. Yes, you want depth, but you also want a future. And I think Aaron Nolan coming over, he addresses depth at the quarterback position, but he also kind of answers some questions about the potential future of this position as well. You're probably not going to land a 2025 kid. So if you're going to go to the quarterback position in the transfer portal, go bring in a young cat that can provide you that depth, but also offer you some upside in the future and then kind of push your chips in for your favorite quarterback in 2026. To me, that makes the most sense for LSU with this quarterback position. I wouldn't go just get a 1-year rental quarterback that's just going to sit on the bench behind Garrett Nussmeier and provide quality depth. Even though they might be good quarterbacks, it doesn't really help you beyond the 2025 year. So if I'm going to the quarterback position, I want to make sure, we're addressing depth, but also setting up for the future success in that quarterback room. Now, the second position that I think all LSU fans are going to want to talk about is the inside of the defensive line. And it needs to, LSU kind of sat on their hands and they weren't willing to pay Dominic Williams or weren't willing to pay a guy like Simeon Barrow, which, okay, Dominic Williams was asking for a lot of money. At a certain point, you have to be willing to pony up for these kind of guys. It's just the cost of competing at the highest level of this sport. Like these guys are going to want a lot of money. There are going to be teams that are willing to pay for them, and the teams that are willing to pay for them are going to reap the benefits. If you're LSU, I don't think you can go another transfer portal cycle just not willing to play hardball when it comes to NIL. And you look at the inside of the defensive line, it's pretty clear this LSU defense that I think really crushed the coaching staff. Like, I think this coaching staff is very, very good. This LSU defense, from a personnel standpoint, to me, it ain't all that great. I think a lot of LSU fans probably agree with that. You look at this team and say they don't look like, from a physical perspective, they, to me, don't look like a top-end SEC defense. You got to bring in guys that are top-end SEC caliber players. Jaheim Otis, the number one player in the transfer portal right now, is, probably one of those guys, 6'5", 320, absolute game wrecker when he's playing his best football. Now, Jaheim Otis is a guy that been a little bit of a roller coaster early in his tenure at Alabama. You've seen some really good things from Jaheim Otis. You've also seen some really bad things. If you can get the best out of Jaheim Otis, this is a guy that's an all SEC caliber player. So Jaheim Otis is a name. I'm also looking at a guy like, DJ Hicks, who's not in the transfer portal right now, but I think very well could be. I don't think he took the step a lot of people were expecting him to take from year one to year two from the state of Texas. DJ Hicks, it kind of similar to Walter Nolan, where Walter Nolan in the second year at Texas A&M last year, you saw some good things, but you didn't see a ton of consistent things, and he transfers to Ole Miss and he puts it together and becomes one of the best defensive linemen in the country. You're kind of hoping you get that same storyline for a guy like DJ Hicks. And so that's another guy that at the very least is giving you that top end SEC caliber body on the inside of the defensive line. And this is not a shot at guys like Javier Suggs or a guy like Gio Paz. Like, I think they were really good depth additions for LSU. But at the end of the day, none of those guys are game wreckers. You add a guy like DJ Hicks and you kind of supplement that with some guys that I really like in terms of Dominic McKinley, who's going to be, I think, a very good football player in his second year. You got some young talent on the LSU defensive line, but you probably want to add some proven commodities as well at the Power 4 level. A guy like Jaheim Otis, a guy like DJ Hicks. Another name that I think could be intriguing is Jordan Hall. And again, you kind of got to make the decision. And there's kind of just two different types of transfer portal targets. There's those guys that, weren't really highly sought after out of high school, go to maybe some low-level P4, G5 schools, play really well, and then they move up to the top end of college football. And then there's guys like Jordan Hall or DJ Hicks, who I think are very, very gifted football players that, for whatever reason, haven't necessarily put it together during their first 2 years, but really could going into year three. So a guy like DJ Hicks or Jordan Hall or Jaheim Otis, if you land those kind of guys, to me, you're at least giving yourself a chance with top-end SEC caliber bodies on the defensive line. And that's just something LSU doesn't have a ton of right now in 2024 that they need to get in 2025. Now, another sneaky position I think could be in a place to add is the edge rusher spot, which has been really good. I mean, you look at Swinson and Savion Jones, they're playing some very, very good football for LSU. But outside of those two, there's not a ton of proven production. There's some young cats that I do like, but you probably want to bring in some proven commodity guys. Gabe Yakus from Illinois, he's a guy that Illinois has had to battle every offseason to keep out of the transfer portal. This is a guy that is, kind of like Nick Scorton from Purdue last year, a guy that has dominated in the Big Ten, might be looking to go to the transfer portal. If he does hit the transfer portal, that is a proven commodity at the Power 4 level that can play at a high level. 28 quarterback hurries, a 17% pass rush win rate, 18 run stops, really good against the run, really, really good pass rusher, proven multiple years at the Power 4 level. That's another kind of guy that if you're LSU, you want to probably try to stick your nose in and get. Now, the last position to me that's a glaring need, and we could say offensive tackle with guys like Emory Jones and Will Campbell leaving. It's hard to know, Weston Davis. Is he going to be ready to go in 2025? Really talented kid in the 2024 class. You're not sure. Brian Kelly and that offensive staff probably have a better feel for what this offensive line might look like and whether they need to address it. a position that is a no-brainer and probably the weakest position on LSU is the safety spot. No playmakers. They quite, and I'm not trying to drag on them, but guys like Jordan Gilbert, they just look slow, and you can't have safeties that are, for lack of better terms, liabilities in the back end. You added Jordan Gilbert kind of knowing he wasn't really a starting caliber dude. He played a decent amount at Texas A&M, but there was a sample size large enough to know he's not going to be a difference maker at the position. A guy like Corey Parrish, who is a true freshman, and I'm just going to say like Caleb Down vibes. This kid is incredible as a true freshman at the safety position. He ended up sticking with Minnesota in the 2024 class, but a lot of Power 4 programs were gunning after this kid late on. I wouldn't be surprised if Corey Parrish, who has put together a phenomenal true freshman year in Minnesota, decides to test the waters in the transfer portal. This is a guy to me that is worth every penny of what he's going to get. Very similar to Caleb Downs. Caleb Downs was phenomenal as a true freshman. Obviously goes to Ohio State, is one of the best safeties in football. Corey Parrish, I think, could be that kind of guy too. And so if you're LSU, you look at the safety position, and at the boundary cornerback spot, there are some names that I like that LSU has that are young that I think could be quite solid. I still think that's probably a position you could add a veteran in the portal. I'll look at the safety position and say that's a must address position for LSU, and Coy Parrish to me would be the guy. Over the next couple of weeks, I think LSU will prove to be very aggressive. I think this conversation is going to change as we see the kind of names that entered the transfer portal. But from everything that we're hearing, there's going to be a very busy offseason with a lot of players on the move. I think there's going to be a lot of talent in the transfer portal. And if you're LSU, you're in a good spot to kind of capitalize on it. This team is not all that far away. I think they have a very, very good coaching staff, specifically on the defensive side of the football. Now, you want to make that step to being an elite defense in the SEC. A coaching staff's not enough. You got to get the top end SEC bodies. These kind of guys, I think, could really help LSU. We'll see how it plays out over the next couple of weeks. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.